everyone, I'm NornQueenAlexis and welcome back to the channel, and welcome to this 9th edition getting ready for 9th edition video. I don't know how to really categorize these videos. It's 9th edition's rules being released early so we can take a look at them. Today we're going to be taking a look at strategic reserves as well as morale. Morale in last edition, 8th edition pretty much meant absolutely nothing. Barely anybody actually cared about it outside of people who were trying to manipulate it to get like 1 or 2 extra kills. But most people just took min units anyway, so it didn't matter. So let's take a look at how strategic reserves work now. How strategic... This is a tongue twister for me for no reason. How strategic reserves work. This ability places units into strategic reserves This ability to place units into the strategic reserve costs command points. Okay. Depending on the combined power rating, oh joy, power rating, you know, that thing that everybody loves playing with. I wish they would just get rid of power rating. To be honest, it is one of the biggest mistakes of 8th edition, and it's very, very, very annoying. It's worth pointing out that at this stage that if the unit have the ability that enable them to set up somewhere on the battlefield, such as teleportation chambers, deep strike. You see, this whole thing can be settled with deep strike. The strategic reserve rule does not apply to them. So I just cut off an entire sentence there. Deep strike. Okay? Also, outflank and infiltrate. There. 3 words. Solves that whole thing. So, let's take a look at this. If you have 1 to 9, power rating. I never even use this, so I never really know. It goes from 1 to 5 up to 50. Pretty bog standard, pretty simple to figure all of this out. So what is the big benefit to it? So in Battle Round 1, you can't set them up. Can't deep strike on turn 1. Battle Round 2, set up wholly within any board edge, not enemy battlefield edge or enemy deployment zone. Okay. That means you can actually set up from the sides of the table and the back of the table as well, depending on how the table is split up. Battle Round 2, set up, Battle Round 3, set up wholly within 6 inches of any battlefield edge. Again, kind of the same thing. Wholly within any battlefield edge. Okay. So what? Not enemy battlefield edge. Ooh, okay, so turn 3, you can actually deploy in your opponent's deployment zone, but not from their battlefield edge. So that's going to be really confusing. So like if you have Dawn of War, for instance, you can deploy on turn 3 into their deployment zone, but not from their main edge that they are controlling, the long table edge. So that's interesting. With the smaller table size, that means that you'll be a lot closer to your opponent. Cannot be set up within 9 inches of an enemy's model. Okay, so you always have the 9-inch charge. Strategic reserve units cannot make a normal move, advanced move, or fall back. So they can charge. Strategic reserve units always count as having moved in this turn. Okay, so that gets rid of things that counts heavy weapons as moving. Strategic reserves units do not set up on the battlefield. Any strategic reserve unit not set up on the battlefield by the end of the battle counts. At the end of the battle, oh, you can go past turn 4. Count as destroyed. Okay, so in earlier editions, you can't go past turn 4. If you went past turn 4, you were counted as being destroyed. So I actually like this. I like this a lot. This could be super useful with like melee armies or trying to get flanking positions on your opponents with like Melta squads or Dominions. This might be really good for Dominions and Repressors. Just saying, if the Repressor is still in this edition. We don't know as of yet. Like an ambush, reserves aren't allowed to outflank. Aren't all about outflanking the enemy though. You should your opponent overcome it. Okay, so yeah, they can push you back and whatever. So that's pretty simple. It's just the outflank rules of last edition. It's literally 7th edition's outflank rules, just applied to every unit. That can actually be super tough. Like, you can have Orks swarm in, Tyranids swarm in, warriors actually being 9 inches away from your opponent sound amazing. You can get some big hitting units. Ooh, I like this. I like this a lot. So I'm in favor of this. This makes sense. I just hate that it's power rating and not point level. I wish they would just say points instead. I wish somebody would make a separate chart for just points instead of power rating, because power rating is the dumbest thing in this game. But anyway, I digress. Let's take a move on to morale, which they hid into the Imperial Guard, the Astra Militarum. I was trying not to say Tempestus Scions or Sola Exilia while saying all of this. So the morale phase. Now this is going to be confusing, all right? Are you ready to get through this all with me? No, you're not, because this is incredibly convoluted and way too slow, in my opinion. I like the old combat rules, the old morale phase rules of last edition, 8th edition, 7th edition, and 5th edition. 5th edition was really confusing, but it was kind of fun because you counted units as being outnumbered and you lost morale due to that. I always thought that that was interesting. And I want them to bring back Fearless, because why are demons running? Why are monsters running? Why are Space Marines running? Don't know. The morale phase. While we're on the topic of commissars, I guess we thought we'd take a closer look at the new rules for the morale phase before we go any further. Morale affects every warring faction, from the most stalwart Space Marine to the most cowardly Grot. In the new edition, the morale phase has undergone a subtle change with a big impact. I wouldn't call this a subtle change. I would call this a massive change, because this is going to take forever to do, in my opinion. Anything that slightly slows down a game irks me a little bit. I do apologize about that. I am a little bit salty about things that slow down the game. Morale test, 1d6 plus the number of models destroyed this turn. So that's exactly the same. Unmodified rolls of 1 are always a success, no models flee. If a morale test exceeds a unit's leadership, 1 model flees and other models must take combat. Okay. Combat attrition tests. Okay. All right. Sure. The difference is what happens when you fail your morale test. You make a separate combat attrition roll for each model in the unit, meaning any number of them, or if you're lucky, none of them, may also flee. What's more, the morale is heavily depleted squads, yada yada yada. Okay. So that's just fluff for the most part. So the combat test, roll a d6 for each remaining model in the unit. For each one additional model flees. So d6 plus number failed this turn. An unmodified roll of 1. Okay, if they exceed a unit's leadership, 1 model flees and the model's unit must take the combat test. So 1 model flees if you fail? Okay, so 1 model flees normally. And then you roll d6 for each remaining model in the unit. For each one additional model flees. Okay. Subtract 1 from the combat test if a unit is below half strength. So 1s and 2s fail. If you're at, like, say you have a squad of 15 and you go down to 7. Now you're failing on 1s and 2s. But it looks like you only lose 1. If a morale test exceeds a unit's leadership, 1 model flees and other models must take. So it's just 1 model. Wait, so how did they say none? Because it's always 1 model that flees. Or if you're lucky, none of them. But this flat out says 1 model flees. I'm so confused by that. I mean, I get it. One model flees and the rest have to roll dice, and on ones they flee as well. And I'm assuming Space Marines get to re-roll those because then they shall know no rules. So yeah. The ability to mitigate further losses in combat action can be valuable saves. For example, a commissar's summary execution means that nearby astromilitarum units that failed a morale test has a much better chance of avoiding this eventuality. Okay. Let me reread this just to make sure I got this under control. Morale test 1d6, because it's just d6, plus number of models that are destroyed this unit. So let's just say 5 for this chance. And let's just say you roll a 5, and you have a leadership of 7, so that's 3 that you failed by. So would that mean 3 models are destroyed? Unmodified rolls of 1 always succeed. If a morale test exceeds units of leadership, 1 model flees, and the other models must take the combat. Okay. So those 2 models stay, and you just roll d6 for each one of them? So, anything that lowers your leadership does nothing this edition? Is that what I'm gathering from this? Did you completely remove the negative modifiers on leadership tests? I mean, they barely did anything in the first place, but still. I'm really confused by that. Am I just misreading this? The unit is below half strength. Roll 1d6 for each remaining model in that unit. For each one additional model flees. So if you have 20 models, chances are you're running, what, 6, 12, 18, 3.5 of them failing as well. So you're only losing 4 models to morale a turn if you have a 20-man blob. That actually sounds really good. I like models staying in the combat for indefinitely, especially Imperial Guardsmen. That just sounds good. So then the Commissar has its rule. The first time an astromilitarum unit fails a morale test during the morale phase, whilst it is within 6 inches of a friendly Commissar, you can execute a model. If you do, 1 model of your choice and that unit is slain and the morale test is re-rolled. You do not include the slain model. Okay. I don't know how I feel about that. I really don't. Because on one hand, I'm sitting here and I'm like, okay, that makes perfect sense. Like things like custodians won't break because their morale is so high, and their losses are so low. Such as a battle will barely break. But large squads might suffer from this. Tyranids are probably going to ignore this. Mob rule's probably going to ignore this. Faith is probably going to ignore this, since you could just pass the morale test. So I guess morale is going to be pointless in the next edition again. It doesn't really feel like much is really, and it feels like they took away from morale, to be honest. Because now those models that fled, okay, maybe I misread this. For each one additional model flees. Subtract 1 from the combat test if a unit is below half strength. So that means on 2s they fail. So 1s and 2s, that's a 1 in 3 chance that the model runs. Is that better or worse than last edition? I feel like that's better. Okay, I need to know your guys' thoughts. Did I misread this? Am I misreading this? Please tell me in the comment section down below. I want to know if I got this wrong, because right now it just feels like morale tests are going to be completely pointless, just like they are in 7th edition, or just like they are in 8th edition. So please tell me what your thoughts are in the comment section down below. I like this rule because it punishes big giant squads, but not as much with leadership tests. And it mitigates the amount of losses that you get, which I really like. So tell me your thoughts in the comment section down below. Also, while you're there, be sure to check out all the links in the description down below. There you can follow me on all sorts of social media, including Twitch, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. And if you're super awesome, you can check out my Patreon. Patreon goes a long way to help supporting the channel. It's keeping this roof over my head. Actually, it's pretty much keeping my cell phone active and putting money into savings so I can get my own place. It's kind of really important. Anyway, as always, I'm NornQueenAlexis. I love you guys. Bye.